God chooses the man nobody wants. They laughed when he walked in the room, not because he was funny, but because he didn't belong, not by their standards, not by their definitions of greatness, charisma, or success. He was overlooked, underestimated, misunderstood. And that's exactly why God chose him. Because when men look for credentials, God looks for character. When the world chases the polished, the popular, the prepared, God steps into the shadows and finds the broken, the buried, the forgotten. You see, God doesn't choose who society celebrates. He chooses who can carry the weight of divine purpose. And that weight is heavy. So he gives it to the one who's already been crushed, to the one who's been betrayed, rejected, abandoned, because pain is the price of power. And only those who have been humbled can be trusted with heaven's fire. Moses stuttered. David was a shepherd. Gideon was hiding in fear. None of them looked like leaders. But God doesn't crown the qualified. He qualifies the called. You might be that man, the one nobody sees, the one who was passed over for the job, the opportunity, the relationship, the recognition. But let me tell you something that will burn through your soul. You were not rejected. You were preserved. You were not disqualified. You were being developed, because before God sends you out, he locks you in. He puts you in obscurity to develop your clarity. He strips away your titles so you can discover your identity. And when the world forgets your name, heaven starts preparing your destiny. The pain wasn't punishment. It was preparation. The loneliness wasn't abandonment. It was alignment. You had to learn how to stand alone so that when you rise, you'll never kneel to public opinion again. You had to lose your applause so that your ego wouldn't sabotage your assignment. You had to fail in the open so pride could die in private. God was not late. He was precise. He chooses the man nobody wants because that's the man who's been emptied of pride, emptied of performance, emptied of pretending. So there's room to be filled with purpose. Do you think it was an accident that the stone the builders rejected became the cornerstone, that the bastard child from Bethlehem became the King of Kings, that a man nailed to a cross in public shame became the redemption of all mankind? Greatness is never born in comfort. It is forged in the fires of contradiction. And you, the one they counted out. You're being called in. Let me tell you the truth. The world doesn't want to admit. We live in a society obsessed with packaging, not power. We reward the loudest voice, not the deepest wisdom. We elevate influence, not integrity. But God scans hearts, not headlines. God watches how you handle silence before he releases you to speak. God watches how you steward defeat before he ever allows you to taste victory. You want to be chosen? Then show you can carry the weight of rejection without becoming bitter. Show that you can be betrayed and still choose forgiveness. Show that you can sit in silence and still believe in the voice that called you. That's who God chooses. Not the loud, not the perfect, not the self-appointed, but the man who was broken and didn't let it make him bitter. Joseph was so, left for dead by his own brothers, thrown in a pit, then a prison before the palace. Why? Because before you can lead nations, you must learn how to lead yourself in the dark. And some of you are in that darkness right now. You're asking why. Why didn't they see your worth? Why didn't they love you back? Why does every door feel closed? Because if every door was open, you'd walk through the wrong one. If every person stayed, you'd give your heart to the wrong one. If every platform was offered, you'd lose yourself, performing for people who never mattered. So God said no, not to punish you, but to protect you. He hides those he calls, not to humiliate them, but to build them, to build strength in your spirit, to build discipline in your bones, to build steel in your convictions, so that when the flood comes, you don't drown, you rise. Like Noah, building an ark in the middle of mockery, building something for a storm the world couldn't see. But he saw it, because faith isn't blind. It sees what logic cannot comprehend. It hears what doubt tries to drown. And some of you, you've been building in silence. You've been dreaming while others sleep, studying, while others scroll, forging a vision, while they chase validation. And maybe it feels like nobody notices. Good, because God does his best work in the shadows. Do you know why David could face Goliath? Because he fought a lion and a bear. When no one was watching, he wasn't seeking fame. He was defending the sheep, and that's why God chose him. Because he was faithful when nobody clapped. Because he worshiped in the field long before he ever sat on a throne. Because he didn't need a title to carry the spirit of a king. That's what God looks for. Faithfulness when it's lonely. Discipline when it's quiet. Integrity when nobody's checking. So if you're in a season where nothing is working, where everything feels like delay, to remember this: you are not being buried. You are being planted, and the difference is everything. A burial is the end, but a planting is the beginning. God is about to water what the world thought was dead. He is about to raise the man they left behind, the man they called average, the man they said was too flawed, too late, too limited, because God delights in defying expectations. And the one they mocked will be the one they follow, not because he demanded a throne, but because he carried a cross. You were never meant to blend in. You were made to break the mold. They tried to silence you, not knowing your silence was sacred, not knowing it was in the silence where your strength was born. The man nobody wanted is becoming the man everybody needs. But here's the secret. He no longer needs them, because the approval you were dying for was replaced by purpose you would die for. That's the shift. That's the transformation. When a man no longer needs validation, he becomes unstoppable, because his mission isn't built on applause. It's built on assignment. He doesn't move to be seen. He moves because he must. And that's what happens. When God raises the man nobody wants, he doesn't ask for permission. He doesn't knock on doors. He becomes the door. He doesn't fit the room. He redefines the room. He doesn't echo opinions. He speaks truth, even if it shakes the earth beneath his feet. You want to know what real power is? It's not fame. It's not followers. It's not fancy titles or trending status. Real power is when you've been through hell and came back whole. When you've been betrayed, but still walk with love. When you've lost everything and still rise each morning with vision. When they mock your dream and you keep building anyway. Because you're not driven by the crowd. You're driven by the calling. Listen to me. The world will offer you thrones made of sand. They will offer you crowns laced in compromise. But the man God chooses, he bows to no counterfeit kingdom. He knows a temporary crown is nothing compared to eternal character. So let them laugh. Let them walk away. Let them whisper. Let them say you're too broken, too slow, too unqualified, because you are not called by them. You are called by Him. And when God calls a man, He does not consult the crowd. He does not need a committee. He does not negotiate your worth. He speaks once, and that word echoes through eternity. But make no mistake, with calling comes crushing. Because if you want the oil, you must press the olive. If you want the fire, you must face the furnace. If you want the crown, you must carry the cross. So stop asking for a lighter load. Ask for a stronger back. Because what you're carrying, it's not just for you. It's for the people watching, for the next generation, for the man who's losing faith, for the child praying for a reason to hope. Your scars are someone else's survival guide. Your tears will water someone else's dream. Your breakthrough will be the blueprint for others who are about to quit. That's why you must not quit. That's why the pressure is real, because your destiny is heavy. Heaven gave you weight not to break you, but to prove you could bear it. You're not being punished. You're being trusted. Trusted with pain. Trusted with power. Trusted with purpose so great. Hell trembles every time you wake up, because it knows you're the one who got away. You're the one who should have given up, but didn't. You're the one who should have stayed down, but got back up. You're the one who wasn't supposed to make it, but you're still standing. Not because you're perfect, but because you were chosen, and that's the most dangerous kind of man there is. The man who knows he shouldn't even be here, but by grace he is. The man who knows he wasn't supposed to succeed, but he did through blood, sweat, and divine intervention. The man who walks with fire in his bones and love in his chest, not because life was kind, but because purpose was stronger than pain. That is who God chooses. The man who has every reason to be bitter, but chooses to bless. Every reason to quit, but chooses to build. Every reason to curse the darkness, but chooses to be the light. And if that man is you, then your time has come. You've been tested, refined, sharpened, prepared, not for the spotlight, but for the assignment. Not for ego, but for impact. Not for applause, but for alignment with something eternal. And now you walk differently. Not because you're arrogant, but because you remember the pit. You remember the nights you cried, the mornings you wanted to stay in bed, the days your faith barely held together. And yet, here you are, standing, breathing, becoming. They still don't understand you. Good. They're not supposed to. You were never meant to fit in their box. You were built to break it. Because when God chooses a man, He ruins his ability to be ordinary. He gives him eyes that see what others miss. He gives him ears that hear destiny calling in the noise. He gives him a heart that refuses to settle for anything less than what heaven designed. And that man becomes a storm. Not to destroy, but to disrupt. To shake people awake. To shift the atmosphere. To remind the world that greatness was never about talent. It was about truth. And truth, my friend, cannot be canceled, cannot be controlled, cannot be stopped by status, systems, or statistics. When truth walks into the room, everything changes. And you are that truth. You are that voice. You are that man. God chose when no one else would. So rise, not because it's easy, but because it's eternal. Rise because you weren't built to crawl through life. Hoping for scraps of approval, you were forged in rejection to carry the roar of redemption. You were set apart, not to live in fear, but to stand in fire. You are not here by accident, not here by mistake, not here by random odds or broken paths. You are chosen, chosen by the only voice that matters, the voice that saw you in the furnace and said, that one, that's the one I'll use. He knew what would break you. He knew who would leave. He knew what would test you. And still, he said, yes, that's my warrior. That's my instrument. That's my vessel of fire. He didn't choose you for perfection. He chose you for your perseverance. He didn't need your credentials. He needed your consent. He needed your yes in the middle of your why. He needed your faith in the face of your failure. He needed your willingness when everything in you wanted to run, because that's when heaven moves. Not when you feel strong, but when you move anyway. That's when God breathes on your bones and they start to live. That's when dead dreams rise from graves you thought were sealed forever. That's when legacy is born, not in comfort, but in the crucible of obedience. So stand tall, man of God. Even if your knees are shaking, speak loud. Even if your voice trembles, walk forward. Even if the path isn't paved yet, because you don't walk alone. You never did. The same fire that lit the bush before Moses now burns in you. The same breath that raised dry bones to warriors now fills your lungs. The same voice that whispered to Elijah in the cave now echoes in your silence. And the same God who chose the man nobody wanted has chosen you. So let them doubt. Let them stare. Let them wonder how you got here. You'll smile because you know you were never supposed to be accepted. You were supposed to be anointed. You were never supposed to fit in. You were born to stand apart. You were never supposed to be the favorite. You were called to be the faithful. And faithfulness is what moves heaven. So walk like you're called. Pray like you carry fire. Work like nations depend on it, because they do. Your vision isn't just about your success. It's about every soul that will be set free. Because you refuse to stay small. Because you refuse to believe what they said about you. Because you refuse to bow to fear, to fame, to failure, to fitting in. Because you stood when no one else would. Because you believed when logic mocked you. Because you said yes when everything in your body screamed run. That's who God uses. The man nobody saw coming. The man nobody thought would rise. The man nobody chose. But heaven did. And now it's your turn to rise. Let them watch. Let them wonder. Let them whisper. Because the man God chooses can no longer be ignored. Thank you.